There's so much talk on TikTok right now about Hannah Nealman and the article in the Times about Ballerina Farm, right? So if you don't know, she's been crowned as the queen of tradwives. She has like about 9 million followers, and some other facts are that she's Mormon. She's living in a farm. She has like 8 kids, but she's also, I think, the Miss Universe or Miss America or something like that, a content creator on social media, and so on and so on and so on. And I think so many people, like, if you can, of course, go read the article in the Times. It's very well written, and the writer is amazing, in my opinion, that, did the article. However, I have a few thoughts from that, and I'm coming from a very interesting perspective, because actually my husband, just like Ballerina Farm's husband, Daniel Lehman, was also raised Mormon. And I'm saying was raised Mormon because, hear me out, because he is even served one of the missions that they do in that church. And to give you a full background, I wasn't necessarily raised really religious. Like here in Europe, I feel like it's more like a tradition. My parents, we're all Roman Catholic. We have been baptized, but we were never really practicing or active in that faith. But so my husband, he grew up very, very, very in the Mormon church, and he even served the mission. And long story short, though, while he was serving the mission, he essentially decided that it opened his eyes, and he was not like part of, he essentially left that faith, he left that religion, and he essentially said it wasn't for him anymore. But because he has been to the temple and all those kind of things, and because part of our extended family, of course, is still Mormon as well, I understand very well about what also that faith is about, what that religion is about, the mindset that you're in when you're in the church, when you're active in the church, and so on. And even though my husband is or has been raised in that church, I haven't. So I still don't quite get to that point of being able to really relate to, I guess, what Hannah Nealman, sorry, has been going through. But here's the one thing that I will say is, and also after kind of like chatting about it with, my husband, who's also my best friend, by the way, and he's completely different. So first of all, a few things. Like everyone seems to demonize the Mormon faith. And I will say this, that I've seen a lot of good come from that as well, right? I think it's really easy to point fingers, and sort of also saying that Daniel, like the husband, when I went on Reddit and other comments that I see on TikTok, they are just pretty much saying how the husband completely trapped Hannah, and poor her, and blah blah blah, and so on, and she's super, and okay, there's a point to that, of course. I get it, right? It's not essentially necessarily cool, the marketing tactics that they're using, but they are marketing tactics, right? Like either you have enough social literacy or social media literacy to understand that, or you don't. That's a different topic. But I think that what we're underestimating here, and I'm saying that from a person that was raised in the faith and that completely went and had a lot of like backlash happening. So essentially my husband, but they left the faith and the faith, and they went for all of that, and they kind of found their own way. They kind of did a lot of like work when it comes to self-development and self-growth to really like redefine and re-understand and recreate who they were at the core. So what I want to say with that is that Hannah had the choice. She didn't need to marry. At the end of the day, she did not need to marry Daniel. No one handcuffed her, kidnapped her, or dragged her down the aisle in order to marry that man. So somewhere I read too that that he used his influence because he's super rich and from his dad, and he was pulling strings to sit in a flight next to her, and really kind of because she kept turning him down, and he really really apparently wanted her. But again, like here's to my point, right? Like unless there's something we don't know, she could have made her own decision. She was already at Juilliard. She probably had her life already in New York. She did not need to marry this man. So let's give ourselves as humans a little bit more agency, right? Like, and a little bit also more self-responsibility, okay? So I get the whole thing that the life that she maybe has found herself in right now is, especially after this article, being looked at as horrible and exhausting, and like, oh my gosh, this poor wife, right? But at the same time, I feel like it comes down to also that it depends on who you choose your partner, and who you choose at the end of the day is a decision that you make yourself, unless again there's something that we might not know in the background. Okay, so this is one thing. The next thing is that, again, going back to what I said about demonizing the Mormon church, right? And there's a lot of things to that, right? And we can talk a lot about that. And I think there's good and bad people in any kind of faith, religion, whatever. Even if you're agnostic or atheist or whatever, there's good and bad people, okay? So in my opinion, like, I also think that there is a lot that good comes out. One of the things that always comes to my mind is like how the kids are usually cherished in that faith. And what I've seen is just that by and large, the kids are liked too much. They're really, really made to feel special, and they're kind of like the center of a family's universe in a way, right? So I can dive, of course, deeper and deeper into that too. But like, another thing is just like a work ethic, right? Hard work ethic. And I mean, that's something that Ballerina Farm, I do want to say that it really shows, right? Like it or don't like it. I mean, you can work yourself to exhaustion for sure, but like the work ethic, that's something my husband says that's something that's definitely instilled in most Mormons. Depending on, like, again, like how many kids you have, of course most Mormons have like a lot of kids, obviously. And I hope you do know too, right, that there's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the Mormon church, in my opinion, as you think of it, especially like, headquartered in the US in Salt Lake City and so on. And then there's those people who essentially broke off from that church and they founded the Community of Christ, which in my opinion, that is where the cult part comes in. From, just my opinion. I know some people think different about it, but there's also a Netflix show on it. I think it's on Netflix, about the Community of Christ and how this is really a cult. Because to me, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or LDS Church, is, I mean, in fact, a registered religion in the USA. And also in many other countries, but you can Google that. And from my understanding, Hannah and Daniel Nealman, they are part of the LDS Church. So they're registered religion and not per se a cult. Yes, you can fight me on this, but then we have to start a whole discussion of the definition of what makes a religion, what makes a cult, and what makes a sect, and whatever not, okay? So this is probably a different TikTok video. But to sum it up, I think the article has been, in the Times again, very objectively written, really well written, paints a very clear picture. Number two, though, I do think we cannot forget that Hannah Nealman still is your own person, can make your own decisions, and has the power to make her own decisions. And again, that's coming from someone that I've seen the transformation happening, from someone that has left the LDS Church because it was not right for them, aka my husband, and has essentially redefined himself, recreated himself as he needed to, to fill some sort of holes, of course, in your mindset. But also in the sense that, and I haven't even mentioned it yet, but compared to some members in my family, compared to a lot of my girlfriends, and how they sometimes talk about their husbands, my husband, right, like, he's one of my best friends, and we are completely equal when it comes to partnership, when it comes to also raising our kids, when it comes to making money. He was, for instance, the one, and that's like getting really private, but he doesn't want more than 2 kids. So just because you have maybe a Mormon or LDS background, of course they are active in the church, right? Hannah and Daniel Nealman, but just because you grew up with a Mormon mindset doesn't mean that you want like 8 kids. So there's just a few things to say to that, right? So again, like, I think we have to give her some agency, because I think that's just how I like to think about it, right? I think everyone's responsible for themselves, again, unless they were coerced or forced into something, but you have your own brain, and so you can use it, in my opinion, right? So again, no one dragged it on the aisle. I think so she created something still, in my opinion, really cool. Is it utterly and horribly exhausting of the kind of life that she lives? Probably. I wouldn't want to be in her shoes. I wouldn't have chosen to marry that man, from everything that we can tell or see about him on social media, probably. I'm also not the woman who could ever, in my wildest dreams, have 8 kids. So yeah, just a few thoughts. But what that also brings up is that we all need to understand a little bit more about social media literacy, which I talked about in another video of mine. Anyways, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Start commenting and let's continue this discussion. And in case you grew up Mormon as well, or are Mormon still, or are not Mormon still, I would love to hear your take on that, right? Because I feel like most people who have no relationship at all with that church or with that religion, they really seem to be demonizing it from that article, which I don't think is right either. There's some really great people in that church too, and bad people, just with everything.